Okay, we don't have time to go through the full creative process. We teach a 45-hour course in creative problem solving, and we only have about 40 minutes left, so I'm going to shrink this down. What's the basic essence of the creative process? What can immediately make you a more effective thinker, creative thinker? Well, it's managing this, and this is what this diamond represents. We all do this. We all have different thinking skills, and there are at least two thinking skills that we all have, and that is the ability to think in a divergent way and ability to think in a convergent way. Divergent thinking means an ability to generate many, varied, original ideas. Cognitive psychology shows us that. We all can do that. Cognitive psychologists also tell us that we can all think in convergent ways. It's where the diamond is closing down, coming to a point, a focal point. Convergent thinking is evaluating, screening, selecting, supporting. It's good critical thinking skills. We all do this, but the problem is sometimes we mix up these two kinds of thinking. Divergence and convergence. Sometimes what happens is we try to diverge and then we immediately converge. It's like trying to drive a car, putting the accelerator on and riding the brake at the same time. Where do you get the best gas mileage? Highway driving or city driving? Highway. We get the best fuel efficiency on the highway because it's not stop and start. Every time you stop, you then burn up a lot of energy to get back to speed. The same thing's true with divergence and convergence. If you slam the brake convergence too quickly, then you're going to shut out a lot of creative ideas. Where this is most commonly seen is in meetings. I call them clay pigeon meetings. You're sitting around, someone says, hey, anybody have an idea for this problem? We got this problem. We've got this tough nut of a problem. Anybody got an idea? You know, so someone's asking for some divergence, for some thinking. And then often what happens is after the idea is suggested, what's the next comment that comes out of someone's mouth? That won't work. It gets shot down. What happens then? Everybody shuts up. Yeah. The door's shut, yeah. People are sitting there thinking, wow, that person just got his butt, shot out of the sky. Why would I suggest an idea? One way to immediately, when you're looking for something new, when you're trying to take a tough problem, a complex problem, you're searching for a new solution, is to separate these two kinds of thinking. First you diverge, first you build the menu of options without convergent thinking. First you build the menu. Why do you do that? There's this area of familiarity that runs down the center. If we don't stretch our minds, you know what we tend to do? We tend to stick what we've already thought of. And unless you stretch, unless you really stretch your thinking for something new, you're not going to get out of that area of familiarity into that area of new discovery. When you take a list of ideas and you evaluate a list of ideas, this has been done in research. You take a group, you have them generate ideas, and you evaluate those ideas for originality. You take the first third and say compare it to the last third. Where do you think the most unoriginal ideas are? The first third or the last third? Obvious. The first third. Because when you ask people for ideas, what they'll do is they'll tell you either what they think you want, right? They're trying to please you. They'll tell you what they think you want, or they'll tell you what they're already been kicking around. But when you push people to come up with more ideas, that's when they get into new thinking. So first, if you're looking for breakthrough ideas, we spend time diverging, building a whole menu, then we come and then we select and we converge. We're going to be practicing this in the seminar, and in fact, we're going to be trying that out here. Okay, so we're going to try an exercise here. You all have something to write with. I'm going to give you a few minutes. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to come up with 3 interesting sentences. I want you to be creative with this. Okay? We went from, this is kind of like the fundamentals. We did math earlier. Now we're doing writing. Okay? So we're doing math and writing. What I want you to do is I want you to come up with 3 interesting, creative, fun sentences, but I'm going to limit you. You have to use these 3 words in every sentence. Okay? So I want you to use the word round, yellow, and sour in every one of those sentences. Okay, so, and I want you to write these down. Come up with 3 interesting sentences using those 3 words. Okay? Give you a few minutes to do that. If you're happy with what you have, just out of curiosity, turn to a neighbor, someone sitting next to you, and the goal was to come up with a creative, imaginative, fun sentence. Just out of curiosity to see how good you were, why don't you turn to a neighbor and share a sentence or two? Okay. It must have been pretty good because the energy in the room just went way up. So the goal was to come up with 3 interesting sentences, creative sentences using these 3 words. My hope here was to get you to think in a divergent way, to search for solutions. How many of you wrote 3 sentences and then stopped? How many of you wrote 3 sentences and then stopped? Okay. About half the group here. What generally happens when I ask groups to do this, I ask you to come up with 3 interesting sentences. You know what a lot of people do? They do exactly that. They write 3 sentences and stop. Did I say only write 3 sentences? The goal is to come up with 3 interesting sentences. How do you know that the first 3 sentences you wrote were the most interesting sentences you would come up with? How does that tie into leadership? Well, if you want people to come up with breakthrough ideas, you got to push them. You got to push them beyond their comfort zone. And how do you do that? Well, here are 4 guidelines, and I'll go through each one of these. If you want people to be effective divergent thinkers, you want to encourage these 4 kind of rules to thinking. And I'll start with the second one because it ties into what we just did. Go for quantity. The best way to have a breakthrough idea is to have lots of ideas. The more ideas you have, the greater chance you have of getting to that breakthrough. The 3 sentences you just wrote down, if you had written 20 sentences and then went back and picked the 3 most interesting, you'd probably find that you'd have more and better options to select from, as opposed to stopping after you wrote the first 3.
Doesn't that go into how you pose the problem to people? You had said come up with as many interesting sentences that would change our mindset as we start to think.
That's a good point. And I set you up. It was, I got you, and it worked. What I did is I set you up to do what you would normally do if I didn't push you. And you're right. As a leader, that's one of the things you want to do is to break that kind of, that staid, kind of focused thinking. I'm going to give you exactly what you asked for. And as you're saying, as a leader, how do you set them up to push them, to encourage that? So you're exactly right. Yeah. So go for quantity. Best way to have a breakthrough idea is to have lots of ideas. How do you get to that is the first principle, which is to defer judgment. This is the key principle of divergent thinking. If you want people to come up with lots of ideas, we're going to suspend evaluation. We're going to hold off judgment till later. You're going to say, hey guys, I want your thinking, I want your ideas. Let's not judge the ideas right now. Let's have all the ideas come out. We'll reserve the judgment for later. So we talked about deferring judgment, going for quantity, making connections. We're going to, when looking for breakthrough ideas, we're going to allow people to build on, piggyback thinking, make associations. And then the 4th principle of divergent thinking is to seek novelty, to push for really original ideas, to say, you know, anything goes here. Even if you think it's wild, if you think it's out of the box, anything goes here. So why is striving for quantity an important thing? Here's just some stats from industry. First one's an interesting statistic. This was a study that came out in '97. In order to get to one successful product innovation in the marketplace, it took initially 3,000 concepts to get to one breakthrough, to one successful innovation. Why is that? It's because a lot of ideas fail. In order to get to one successful idea, you have to start by testing lots of ideas first. Capital One, I get something from them just about every week in the mail for credit cards. They experimented with 45,000 different kinds of ideas for new credit cards. And now they have a lion's share of the marketplace in terms of credit cards because they're pushed for new ideas. And IDEO, a very well-known design company out in California, in order to get to 12 ideas that they eventually sold to clients in the toy design area, they first started with 4,000 different ideas in order to get to 12 successful ideas. And there are lots of historical examples. The best way to get to a breakthrough idea is to first start with many ideas. If you're a leader and you have one idea, you're at high risk. Because if that idea fails, what are you going to do? You have no backup plan. Okay, let me jump forward to this. All right, we're going to try this out in groups. So this is kind of awkward in the theater setting. So maybe as best you can with 2, 3, not 2, at least 3 people sitting around you, I want you to try divergent thinking as a group. So we did it individually. We're going to try it as a group now. Here's what I want you to work on: how to improve a bathtub. So we're going to do this as a practice activity in your seminars. You're going to try this out on something real. Here's the goal. I want to check and see how well you do as divergent thinkers in teams. Now, I'm going to give you 5 minutes. Here's the benchmark. Here's what research shows. In a 5-minute period, working as a team, typically, if you're thinking effectively as a divergent thinker, you should be able to come up with at least 25 ideas in 5 minutes. That's the goal. All right, so at least 3 people, I'm going to just so we can check your performance, I will need someone in your team to jot down all the ideas you come up with. So we'll need someone to volunteer. Of the 3 or 4 of you, we'll need someone to volunteer to be the recorder. I'll give you the start in a second. So we'll need a recorder. Let me reinforce. You're eager to go. Hold on just a second. Hold on just a second. Okay, so what I want you to do is, as a team now, here's what you're responsible for. You want to come up with 25 ideas for how you might improve the bathtub, because people are taking showers and not taking baths anymore. You want them to take full use of the bathtub. So all the ideas you can have for making the bathtub more enticing, more interesting, and so forth. These are the 4 rules you need to follow. Defer judgment. So if you hear someone shooting an idea down, you're responsible for saying, hey, we're suspending evaluation. All right? We're striving for quantity. I already gave you the goal of 25. While you're doing this, make sure, in terms of building on ideas and making connections, that if someone says something that makes you think of something, go ahead and piggyback off of that. And the 4th principle you want to reinforce in your teams is to really allow for novel thinking, original blue sky thinking. Does that make sense? All right, you have 5 minutes. Go. This is a 1-minute warning. You have 1 minute left. 1 minute. Okay, that's 5 minutes. All right, let's check your performance. Let's see how you did. So I'm going to use these. Let me go back to my 4 guidelines for divergent thinking, and we're going to evaluate your performance against these 4 guidelines, these 4 ways of engaging in divergent thinking. First of all, rule number 1, suspending judgment. You need to report to me how well you did with that. Was there much judging going on, or were you successful at eliminating judgment? You were good? Were there any examples of judgment coming up? Oh, yeah. What happened? Good judgment. Okay, encouraging. All right, let me just comment on that. One of the things you got to be careful of, especially if you're in a leadership position and you're asking people for ideas and you're engaging in divergent thinking, what you want to reward are the ideas coming forward, but don't necessarily pick out an idea. For example, someone shares an idea and you say, oh, that's the best idea I've heard so far. Because what that does is, what does it say about everyone else's idea? They were dummies. Yeah, they weren't very good. So what you want to do is reward effort while you're diverging, but don't necessarily go overboard in terms of picking on an idea and saying, wow, that's brilliant, that's the best idea I've had, because then it makes a judgment about the others. But that's good. You want to reward the ideas as they come forward. Okay, so it sounds like we did pretty well on that. How about go for quantity? Count them up. How many teams hit the goal that I set, which was a minimum of 25 ideas? Raise your hands if you hit that goal. Okay, good number. Okay. All right. Third, making connections. Did you find, and people often report that one of the benefits of doing divergent thinking in a team as opposed to doing it alone is that when you do it in a team, other people will serve as stimulants. You know, they'll say something, you go, oh yeah, that makes me think of this. Did you find that happening as you were doing this as a team? Okay. All right, now this one I'm going to ask you for specific examples. I'm going to challenge you. Do you have an idea in your list that's novel that you think no other team in here generated? We're going to test your ability to be an original thinker. If you have one in your list and you think it's original, raise your hand. I'll ask you to stand up. Okay, hold on. We've got one here. Okay, so we'll see whether other teams generated this or not. Thank you for trying this first. Which one did you generate do you think nobody else came up with? Cleaning without water. Okay, well, thanks for trying. A few had that, but not too bad. Only a few had that. All right, we've got another example in the back, nice and loud. So virtual surround. You want to try one more since that? Yep. Virtual bathtub mates. You get to pick. I take it that it sounds like that one didn't come up in other groups, given the reaction. That was a pretty solid reaction. Yes, sir. Stand up and nice and loud. One that you think no one else generated.
We came up with self-cleaning.
Self-cleaning bathtub. We'll give you another. You got another one? No? Okay, one all the way in the back. Nice and loud.
Rollaway bathtub that dispenses champagne.
Roll-away bathtub that dispenses champagne. You came close. All right. We'll take two more examples. We'll take one here and then one over there. Okay, so yes, sir. Nice and loud. Full immersion bathtub. All right. Okay, yes, sir. Last one. Let's see if this is original.
Ours could be multi-use. It could be used as an automobile parts washer.
A multitasking bathtub. That's great. Okay, let me ask you a serious question. Now, you're not going to use this on every problem. Part of the trick of being an effective leader is determining when it's appropriate to use this kind of skill, right? Because there are times when it's not appropriate. But there are times when it is appropriate, when you're really coming up a tough problem, you don't have a huge time press, you got a little bit of time to think about it, to come up with the right solution, where you might engage a group or a team in this kind of thinking. But let me ask you this question. What's the value, because with some groups, I've done a lot of work with scientists, and they don't quite get this. What's the value of allowing for really novel ideas like what we just shared? Or is it just silly? What's the benefit? Can you think of a reason why, when you're searching for a breakthrough idea, why you want to include rule number 4 here, to allow for novelty? Can you think of an advantage? Say it again? It's marketable. This is that real chance to come up with something that differentiates, that's really out of the box. That could be a niche, because it is so unique. That's a good point. Someone else said something, too. Break down paradigms. Who said that? Okay, breaks down paradigms. Yeah, because it challenges your thinking. And unless you do this, you don't get to that, because it really forces you to look at it differently. Good, you're good at this. Are there any other reasons why you think allowing for novelty? It's a stress buster. One of the things that you want to do is create an environment that allows for ideas to come forward. And if someone shares something that seems off the wall, then what it does, it invites others. Oh, wow, that person just shared that ridiculous idea. Maybe I'll share my idea now. And that's the winner. You know, that's the winner. So it's a stress buster. It brings a playful atmosphere. The other reason is that sometimes it's that novel idea that just might work. You know, it sounds outlandish, but in retrospect, it might work because it might be modified. It can be adjusted. There was a story, this is another case that we used in our book, about a power company out west, in the Northwest, in a very mountainous area. And in the spring, ice storms would come through, ice would build up on the power lines, and the power lines would go down. And they had to send guys out into the field. And sometimes it would take time to kind of get back to the area. It was often dangerous. And so they wanted to find a way to get the power lines back up, or a way of getting the ice off the power lines. And so they got together and they were having a brainstorming session. In this brainstorming session, one of the guys who worked out in the field said, you know, there are a lot of bears out there. What if, what if we put a honey pot on top of the power line, and as the bear climbed up the power line to get to the honey pot, it would shake the power line, because this is one of the things that they noticed, because they'd have to climb up the power line, and their body weight would shake the power line, and that would shake the ice off. And that would make sure the lines don't come down. Pretty funny idea. Guys were laughing. Yeah, put a honey pot on top of a power line, have a bear climb up it. Well, you know what? There was a Vietnam nurse there. She had served in a MASH unit during Vietnam. And it got her thinking. That crazy idea got her thinking. She was thinking, you know what? Shaking power lines. That makes me think of when the helicopters used to come in to the MASH unit, and the downwash from the helicopters would just blow stuff out of the way. She thought, well, what if, shaking power lines, what if we flew a helicopter over top of the power lines and had the downwash kind of blast off the ice that was building up? Well, then someone else followed that up by saying, well, you know what? Corporate just bought themselves a new helicopter. Maybe we can get corporate to use that helicopter when these ice storms come through to go out, fly over the power lines where the ice is starting to build up and blow the ice off. You know what? That was the idea they implemented. Didn't cost them anything more than the fuel, because they already had the helicopter. So if that idea of shaking the power lines by having bears climb up them hadn't come up, that idea might not have come up, that subsequent idea. So one of the other reasons why we include novelty is that that might transform itself into a workable solution. So that's the divergent side, and there are statistics that supports from the military that divergent thinking, again, these are correlations in this research study when they looked at success, and this was again with the military, in solving complex problems, either cued or uncued, their ability to think in effective ways in terms of selling ideas, that's what social judgment is, and then being able to construct successful solutions. The number one factor that they found when we look at the strength of the correlations that led to successful problem solving was, guess what? Divergent thinking. To be able to do what you just did. That was the factor that had the highest correlations.